Now, at this time, I'd like to introduce Frank McShane. He's going to be doing an invocation talk today. And Frank has been in executive consultant and mentoring roles for over 30 years. His initiatives have resulted in cumulative benefits for his clients of well over $1 billion. Square Peg Consultants helps you cash in on your insights that are hidden in your company's data. Frank led Ernst & Young's Northwest Supply Chain and Operations practice for the Pacific Northwest. As president of an 80-year-old paper company, Frank rationalized their product offerings and equipment configurations, taking them from a cash consumer to industry-leading EBITDA levels. As COO of a regional internet service provider, he created security networks for airports, seaports, and municipalities. And municipal police as well, by combining network construction and broadband equipment expertise. Frank returned to consulting in 2017, focused on two root business problems: lack of a clear data-driven strategy and lack of alignment between people, teams, and the business strategies. With that, I'd like to welcome Mr. Frank McShane.
John, I appreciate that introduction, and Jerry for the clapping. That was very nice of you. So I appreciate the opportunity. Good afternoon, everybody, and thanks for attending. I'm going to be talking to you today about an approach that I've been using to help improve the match between teams, particularly leadership teams, and the objectives they're trying to accomplish. And I'm going to start with a little bit of a model. I suspect you've seen some of this in your clients here over the past year, where they had to shift strategies as the pandemic took hold. And some teams had a much easier time adjusting. Some teams didn't adjust, and they kept wanting to go back to what they were comfortable with. We're now going to face that again coming up soon, which is the going back to whatever the new normal is going to look like. The shift is going to take place again. So we're going to move on to that one. Here's an example up here where first thing we're going to want to do is to understand the match or potential mismatch between a team and their objectives. And it's possible to actually analyze the behavior requirements of some strategic objectives. And in this particular example, that is called an executing strategy, which is really focused on existing products, existing processes, markets, and customers, and trying to maximize the return you're getting from those. The team, however, in this example, their behavior profile really is an exploring team, which means their focus is on new things, new products, new customers, new markets, and that's their strength. So we've got a disconnect there. We're going to look at ways to start to bring those together so that we have a better overlap between the two. And notice that the strategy didn't move. So we're not going to sacrifice our objectives in order to bring the team into alignment. The onus really is on the team to make the shift, and we've got to help them. And there's several strategies and tactics we can use to do that. So I'm hoping that your takeaways from this little innovation talk is the fact that a company or a team's objectives, could be a departmental team as well, those can be analyzed from a behavior perspective, not just from a numbers perspective. Also, a team's behavior profile can be determined from the individual members and the bulk of the traits that we find in that team. And then the closer we can get the match between the team profile to the objective, the better the results are going to be. I'm going to take you through a real quick case study of an actual client that I'm working with where we've done this. And I'll be sharing my screen here in just a second with that. Hopefully everybody can see that okay. I'm going to start here. This tool that we're looking at here is from the predictive index, which is my tool of choice in this work. It's not the only one out there, and this is not an advertisement or a sales pitch for the predictive index, but it's the one I use. And so in this particular case, we're working with a large distribution company in the Pacific Northwest. Last year, they had to shift pretty strongly as the pandemic came into place. And their strategic objectives really mostly ended up in this upper right-hand quadrant here, focused on innovation and agility. So they had to look for new markets, new products, new ways to serve their customers within the restrictions placed on us by the government. The next quadrant down below is focused on results and discipline. So this is really focused on existing customers, products, and services and getting the most growth and potential we can out of those. It can also focus on reducing costs. So some strategic initiatives to drive down costs would fit into that category as well. On the left lower side is a focus on process and precision. So just exactly what it says, getting processes in place, making sure we're consistent, sustainable, repeatable, successful execution. And then the fourth one really focuses on the employees and the teamwork between them, between departments, and the level of engagement by the employees. And I think Tom's talk will take us into that quadrant quite a bit. So then we visited the 2021 objectives, which I helped them develop. I also work with an EOS implementer who helps go through their annual planning, and we went through the objectives. We took the 5 key objectives that they came up with and mapped them to these behavior quadrants. And so as you can see, things have shifted from the focus on innovation and agility. For this year, it's really about results, maximizing the return on the customer, the existing customers and markets that we have. They're also putting into place a new ERP system and an engagement assessment tool to give them some feedback about their employees. So that's a lot of process and precision work that has to take place. Plus, out of that engagement tool initiative, they're going to get data that they need to start acting on in order to increase the engagement of their employees. There is also one new market and one new product that they want to focus on. So there's still a little bit of innovation and agility, but the bulk of this down below is really focused on getting results out of existing business and improving the processes and the execution of those processes. So we started with the objectives, mapped those out. Then we took a look at the team. And this is the result of the individual assessments of the personalities in each of the team. And as you can see, the team really, the bulk of the team is focused up in the quadrant for innovation and agility. And in this particular model, the predictive index model, it's called an exploring team. So their strengths really are new products, new markets, new competition, new services, which they excelled at last year. They have a couple of folks that are a little different in the makeup of the team. These are called balancing members of the team. So fortunately, the CFO is down here in this quadrant, focused on results and discipline and numbers and data. And then we have 2 folks who are really, their natural strengths are in the process and precision world. One of whom, fortunately, is the IT director. So that's going to help in the assessment and selection of an ERP process with that kind of focus. You can also see, before we even map the team to the objectives, they have a pretty big hole here in the natural tendencies of people to focus on teamwork and employee experience. But that's one of their strategic objectives, is to start to improve employee engagement. So we've got a hole right there, right off the bat. Now we map the 2 together, we can see that the bulk of the strengths of the team are up here in the innovation and agility, but the strategic objectives really map more closely to the results and discipline and the process and precision, which is really called an executing strategy. And so we've got a mismatch here. It's not a huge one. I've seen worse where the team is up in this quadrant and all the strategic initiatives are here, or the team's down in the results and discipline and they're really trying to improve teamwork and employee experience. So we're not quite opposite, but we got some shifting to do. So there's really 4 different tactics you can take to help help the team make the shift towards those behaviors needed to be successful with those objectives. One is coaching and mentoring and making the adjustment themselves. And so there's two. There's the CEO in green and the COO in purple, and then there's two. There's the operations department head and the sales department head. So those two department heads we're going to work with on shifting down more into a results and discipline focus. And if you're in the adjacent quadrant, that's not too hard of a shift to make. They should be able to do that. Also, then supplementing the team with people from within the organization is kind of the second tactic, in finding people who are more naturally oriented to either results or discipline or process and precision, and bringing them in as part of a project team to focus in on those particular initiatives and supplement the leadership team. For good news for us, hiring consultants is another way of supplementing the team and making sure we've got the right strengths on board. That's going to happen certainly in the ERP assessment and selection process. They've already identified an independent firm to help them go through those evaluations and selection process. And particularly in the teamwork and employee experiences, bringing in somebody to help not only execute the engagement surveys, but to really help them interpret the data and develop the action plans out of that. The fourth tactic is hiring somebody onto the leadership team. And in this case, their belief that the teamwork and employee experience is so important, they're also going to hire a person with that kind of focus for the senior leadership team to really be the voice of the employees on the senior leadership team. So sort of a chief people officer, separate from the HR department, which is really more focused on the payroll and benefits and all of the compliance issues in that world. But they're really looking to create a voice of the employee type of role on the leadership team. So that's the case study. And so I'm going to bring you back to the takeaways. So we've got, hopefully you could see how that the company can and the objectives can be mapped to a behavior model, similar to the way the team can be mapped to the behavior model. And we can see how much of a match or mismatch do you have. And sometimes you've got a very diametrically opposed set of criteria. Sometimes there's some overlap, and that's encouraging, like we saw in the case study. And sometimes there's a great overlap between the desired strategy and the strengths and weaknesses of the team. But those are the four options of what to do to help improve that match. So I'm going to open up for questions and answers. I'm trying to obey my time limit, and also I've got my contact information. I do want to make an offer to this group, so I'm allowed by the predictive index to conduct one of these assessments for one team with myself, you, and your CEO or COO client. We can do one assessment for whatever you think is fair to bill, all the way down to free.